I've always wanted a laser cutter, and I looked around for a while to find a business justification to get one. I was running at that time my 3D print shop where I was making spinning wheels and other sorts of fiber arts tools, and I figured that by making boxes to go with my 3D printed Charka kits, if I was to gain an additional $15 of profit per box, I could get this thing to pay for itself in roughly 100 sales of that box, which was not an insane idea. I bought this thing in April and then ended up giving away the business a few months later. So didn't actually end up paying for itself. This is the second laser cutter that I've purchased. The first one I purchased was the SculptFin S9, which does not have a cover like this, and it also doesn't have the little crosshairs that tell you where it's going to be cutting. It was a lower rated laser. I needed something that could reasonably cut plywood. That was kind of the main business justification for me, was to actually get it to cut objects out, not just engrave them. Not a sponsored video. I purchased this thing because I wanted it, and I've had it for about a year, and I love it. I'm impressed with the way they've packed this. This looks like lifting straps, but I'm not entirely sure what they're supposed to be. I was a little bit concerned when I saw the outside of the box, but I think we're gonna be okay. Oh, it is beautiful. So I got this laser cutter. This is the X-Tool S1 and the 20-watt version, and it's incredibly cool. You can see the smoke stains here on this hex sheet that they give you to cut on. That's because laser cutting produces a lot of smoke. Now, there's a fan in the back, and there is a tube that they give you that you can use to route the smoke out. I tried cutting initially without that, and it smoked out this garage a lot. So what I've done is I've fed it into the same pipe that the dryer was using. And I just made a three-way junction here, and I thought that would be fine. I did not think this through. Whenever the laser cutter is on, it floods smoke up both sides. So I have been essentially cold smoking all of my clothes and the entire room behind them. On the other hand, if I turn on the dryer at the same time that the laser cutter is running, I get enough pressure from both of these that it all goes out. But the moment the laser cutter turns off and stops blowing air, suddenly I get extremely wet, drier air coming down into the laser cutter, and that cannot be good for it. So my solution is I've removed one of the windows from my garage door. I've replaced it with this piece of board. This was the last cut that I made with the laser cutter in that position. And now what I'm going to do is make this the laser cutting station. That way I can have my dryer cord back and we can avoid this problem. You live and you learn. Here's the laser cutter. Here's the outlet vent. So at this point I now had a laser cutter and no business justification for it. So what was I going to use it for? Answer, a suit of Lamellar armor for my son. I threw together a design for these plates loosely based off of findings from Visby, which is an island off the coast of Sweden. The lacings are paracord, and to make things a little easier on myself, I heated the ends of the paracord in order to make them into a kind of needle. When you laser cut stuff out of a sheet, very frequently there's extras. You end up with these kinds of cast-off bits that are full of little cutouts that are just the extra part of a board. This used to be part of one of these 1 foot by 1 foot boards. And having something to do with these small pieces is really, really handy. What I've been doing with most of these pieces is turning them into little lamellar plates. I've got a little pattern that I threw together, and I just make bunches of these whenever I'm laser cutting something else. With the prototype finished, we had to test it, of course, which in our case meant taking it to the Renaissance Fair. There were a few proud moments at this Renaissance Fair. One of my favorites was when my daughter asked for a khopesh at the weapons shop and then showed off some moves at the Pell. Even the little guys got into the spirit of things. One thing we discovered, though, was that the Lamellar armor wasn't actually that comfortable. My son eventually asked to take it off, and his brother wore it for the rest of the day.
Good job! Hiya!
One thing that I want to change about this pattern is that corner. That corner turns out to be sharp enough that when you're wearing the armor, they dig in. They're not actually very comfortable, and that's something that my boys have made comments about.
It's made of wood. It kind of hurts. And bye.
That's it? So what parts hurt? Can you tell me what parts hurt? Just the whole thing?
You need to stop all this.
One thing I find really interesting about Lamellar armor is the fact that it's made out of mass-produced or repeated pieces. This is an ancient version of mass production. Eli Whitney gets credited as the guy who invented interchangeable parts, but there are examples like this from the ancient world that are essentially interchangeable parts. It's a whole bunch of duplicates where any single one of them could be replaced, and they frequently were. Since the kids have declared this to be uncomfortable, I'm going to recycle it into a suit for myself. I am unfastening a panel from this so that I can resize it for myself instead of for my kids. I think this would be a good addition to the chainmail sitting in the corner. And one of the cool things about interchangeable parts is you can interchange them, meaning that you can resize things if necessary, you can repair them. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. You can't do that with plate armor, at least not in the same way. You can recycle individual plates, but generally speaking, plate armor was incredibly bespoke. When ordering plate armor back in the late medieval period, frequently you would send in wax casts of your limbs so that the armorer could tailor absolutely everything to fit your specific body. Whereas chainmail is a little bit one-size-fits-all. I mean, not 100%, but you'd be shocked how many different people can fit into my chainmail shirt, including people substantially larger and smaller than I am. And with the ability to disassemble it like this, you can customize it still further. It is effectively recyclable. The cool thing about Lamellar is it's found in cultures all over the world. Japanese samurai armor is a type of Lamellar. All right, we've got that separated. And so now I'm going to resize this whole thing to fit me. On the inside of this thing, I have just tied square nuts when I need to attach two of these pieces of paracord together. I'm not sure if there's a better way to do it, but that's how I've been doing it. Those corners actually do kind of hurt. You know, I could solve this problem by just making this the lower part. That way it isn't pressing against me quite as much. I think that's what I'll probably do. Okay. And then this thing needs a fair amount more in order to reach around me. But that looks like it'll work. What do you guys do with your laser cutters? This? They said they could be anything, so I became a pangolin. Mark that corner. Hit the button. And then we're going to mark the other corner. And then we'll be ready to cut. That should be a whole lot more comfy. I totally used cheat codes to make this thing by having the laser cutter cut the pieces out. What I'd like to try at some point is to try making plates like this out of steel using, you know, older techniques, just forging them out. I imagine it would be very difficult, but I'll have to try it out to see if that's the case. The idea of making a repetitive product, I imagine you'd probably want to make jigs if you were making that in the ancient world, something that would make it as simple as possible. Probably forge it all into a bar of the same width and then cut them out quickly with a curved chisel, something like that, to get that basic shape. Anyway, thoughts for another time.